One other thing, I noticed earlier that he'd been introduced as being from New Mexico. He's actually from Colorado. So here's Don C.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Don C. I'm an alcoholic. First, I would like to, I was raised by my grandpa, and so my grandpa taught me certain things I was to do as a little child, and then when you grow up, then you just kind of automatically do it. But first I need to, he always said whenever you visit somewhere, you need to acknowledge whose land you're on, because the ancestors are here, and they're in the rocks and the trees and all of those things. So my understanding this is the ancestral land of the Apache people, and so I need to be mindful, to be respectful, and to let their ancestors ask their permission to speak, in their land. And that's why I was taught by my grandpa what I was to do, to do first, and so that always makes me, I guess, in a position of, because people have passed on, that doesn't mean that they're not here. So if you do something wrong, I always hear Grandpa saying, you're supposed to do this. Like for many of us, Don Pritz, his spirit is very well and alive here, and you hear people mention, his name still and what he said, and so he's still bugging us all, in that way. Then I would like to, I'm going to just light a little bit of this sage. I don't need to explain it, because I was taught to do that too. The most important thing that we can do is to take the time to connect with each other, and then spread this medicine, all around. And then sometimes what we do with this medicine is we'll breathe it in. And the reason for that is to recognize that what comes out of there, if the medicine is there, that your words are true. And I'm sure you'll see as we share this, you'll find out that I'm just telling you back what you taught me. So I don't think there's going to be a darn thing that you don't already know. But I do this because I want you to know that over the years, the things that you have taught me, those words did not fall to the ground, without meaning. Those words came and have done incredible things to me and my family, and it seems like about everything that I know, I learned here that's of any value. I can't think of anything that is value I can say I learned somewhere else, because I really didn't know. And then I'm going to put this red cloth, and I'm going to put this eagle feather right on there, because the old people say that if you hold the eagle feather or you're in its presence, that you're not supposed to lie. So I'm an alcoholic still working on some things, so I think I'll just leave it there for now and go from there. And I believe that there's probably 3 influences on why I ended up getting sober. And I think one, I wasn't trying to get sober. I was beyond that. I didn't care no more. And so I know my family was praying for me. My children, my relatives, I know that they were in prayer because there was nothing left to do. And I think the second thing is I was married at that time, and my wife at that time she went to Al-Anon. And she was like closing the drapes during the day, shopping way late at night. She was doing all kinds of different things. And I remember the weekend that she went to Al-Anon, and something clicked for her. And when she came back from that meeting, my life changed tremendously. Whoa! It was. I couldn't believe that she got so indoctrinated and joined a cult movement so fast. But I'm telling you, she used to cover for me and do all that kind of stuff. My boss, I'd be drunk and late for work, and instead of her covering for me, she'd bring the phone in and she'd say, "Jim's on the phone. He wants to know why you're not at work." Stick it in my ear, but she wouldn't cover no more. And so, well, she got really programmed. But I count that as one of the factors that helped me get sober. When she quit doing that, there was something changed. And I think the third reason is I believe I had divine intervention. I believe that the Creator looked down and said, this fool isn't going to make it. I'm going to have to do something to help out here. And what I understand was wherever the Creator lives, He's got a cupboard there. And in that cupboard, there's some grace clouds. And it's like that sign we see in our meetings, but by grace. So there's a little grace cloud, is my understanding. And you got to qualify to get one of these clouds, because if you can get the grace going, you got some freedom to get things started and get it going. And so you got to qualify to get one of these grace clouds, because if you get one, it sails it through the air and it stops right over your head, and now you can you got some time to do some work. And there's a list of qualifiers. It's a long list, and I believe you've got to have 3 or more of these things on that list to get a qualifier, to get a grace cloud. You got to be like dishonest, or a liar, or a cheat, self-righteous, judgmental, drinking, lying, cheating. And the list goes on. If you just get 3, you get a cloud. So then the Creator opens up and He sails it through the air, and it goes, stops just over you, and now you got the grace. And so that's what I believe happened. I believe that I got this grace cloud, and that was why all the stuff that I did, all the undeserving things that I did, the unconditional love that the Creator expresses through grace, says, "I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you do the magic." And so that's how I think things happened. And there was a time I thought that once you went through the work and stuff, the cloud went away. But I found out that's not true. I found out to this day that I still function under that grace cloud. I know there's some lines in the big book used to scare me a lot, where it talks about there'll come a day when you have no mental defense against that first drink. I know what that means. I understand that sentence. And I was surprised that was some of the first words you told me. And I couldn't believe somebody was saying something like that. I never would expect anybody to say that you had knowledge of what that meant. I know what that meant. And so what you have told me to do is that all I had to do was to share what happened, what that was like, and what it is like now. And that I don't need any help with it, because I was there for all of that I remember, except the blackouts. Those I don't remember, but the rest I do. So that's what I need to do, is to share that part of my story. And probably the best way I could share that is through a story. I came into this program, and I didn't get it right away. I was slipping. I slipped when I was happy. I slipped when I was mad. I remember one time I went in a business meeting and I was waiting for this guy, and there was a bar stool there in the door to go into the restaurant. And this bartender, he poured a beer by accident. And he said, "Hey, I poured this by accident. Do you want it?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'll take it." And that was it. I ended up drunk that night coming back home. And so there was a guy that come to me and he said, "Hey," he said, there's this Indian guy up in Estes Park, which is a little town out of Colorado. And he said, he's giving a talk up there. He said, "I think he's an Indian guy." He said, "Let's go up there and listen to him." And so I thought, well, what the heck? You could go up there, and then that treatment center, they had little cabins there, and they'd rent them. If you were in the program, they'd rent them to you for like $25 a night or something. They had a little fireplace and everything. So we went up there, and I walked in this room, and here this man sat behind the table. And I noticed his big book he had there in front of him. That book looked like it was run over by a Mack truck. It was dirty, it was coffee spilled, it was bound together by rubber bands, and you could tell it had a lot of traffic. And this guy, he had the bluest eyes. This is what was noticed about him. And I walked in that door, and he looked up at me, and I looked at him, and at Natashnia, we connected, and it never ever went away. And so that story that he told, that's what made the difference. That got me to be able to see what was going on here. I couldn't understand this, what was going on in this program. And so I'm going to tell you the story that I heard him tell that night, because when he told it, it was like he reached in my inner soul and pulled out all what I felt and all what was going on, and that's how it seemed. And so in our culture, when you there's a thing that we're taught is if somebody gives you a song, you just don't go sing that song and everybody likes it, you take the credit for it. Before you sing it, you have to say, "This song was given to me by," and then you give the name of the person who gave you the song. So I need to tell you this story I'm going to tell you is not mine. This comes from Don Pritz. And in talking to him, I have his permission to use this story. So that's how it originated. And this story is about a boxing match. And there was this arena, and there was sitting in one corner was alcohol with black trunks, and sitting in the other corner there was me in the white trunks. And we're sitting in this ring, and people were coming in, they were sitting in the seats, and the arena was getting filled up, and they're selling popcorn and peanuts and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool. And then what they do on those types of events is on the very front row they put a ribbon that says reserved, and that's reserved for your family. So the way that works is that your family has the best view. There's no blockages. They have a very special seat. And so pretty soon my family came in, they removed the ribbon, and they all sat right down there in the front row. And so it came time for the match to begin, and the referee called us out, and there was something about that alcohol when we got out there and stood in that ring, is he looked me in the eye, and I looked him in the eye, and we had that connectedness, Natashnia. There was just something that connected me to the alcohol. He had this coolest smile on his face, like he's a friend. And so the referee started explaining, okay, there's rules, there's no hitting below the belt, and when I say break, you break, and we went through all the rules, and we had to hit our gloves together, and so we did that. So we went back to our corners and sat down. Pretty soon the bell rang. We come out, started boxing around, and first couple of rounds it was just, it was nothing, it was just kind of fun, and it was all right, and no big events. But somehow, I think it was about the third round, we were out there, and I must have just moved the wrong way, and the alcohol just stung me really good, a head punch right in the eye, and I was surprised. And I kind of jumped back, and the alcohol caught on that I was surprised, and he said, "That was just a lucky punch, you can whip me." And in my innermost self, I knew that the alcohol just told me the truth. I knew that I was able to do that. And so we sat down, and we just was very attracted to each other. Even during the break, eyes was connecting and smiling, and so we get out there for another round, and this time alcohol is punching more frequently. And each time it would sting me on the other side, hit me in the stomach. Even a couple of times hit below the belt, and the referee said it wasn't fair. But the alcohol did when the ref wasn't looking, and each time it would do that, I would look at the alcohol, and he'd say, "You can whip me." That was just a lucky punch, and I knew the alcohol was telling me the truth. So, got a couple more rounds going, and I noticed people started walking out. They started leaving. Because I guess they started to anticipate what was going on from how they were seeing it. And then pretty soon, only ones left in that arena was my family, was still sitting there. And by this time, alcohol, it was just beating the crap out of me, kicking, and referee wasn't saying nothing, and each time the alcohol would say, "You can whip me." And I remember it was about around 7, 8 or so. I sit down there, and I couldn't see very well anymore. And I realized I had to get a strategy going. I had to think differently about this. So I'm checking out the alcohol, and so it's sitting over there and smiling. They would even lip sync, "You can whip me." Way over in the corner, So as I was strategizing, and pretty soon I felt this tug on my arm. And I looked down there, and it was my son. And I looked at him, I says, "What?" And he said, "Dad," he said, "Mama says to tell you, let's go. Just climb down." He said, "Let's all go home." And he said, "We'll just, talk things over and everything." And I looked down at him, and I said, "I want you to go back, and you tell your mama, and you tell your brothers and sisters to watch the next round." I said, "I'm going to make some moves. I got moves that no one's ever seen before. It's an old Indian trick." I said, "I want you to watch me." So he walked back, and bell rung. I got out there, and this time alcohol put me right down on my knees. I couldn't even stand up, and it was kicking me in the ribs and stomping on my head, and it kept saying, "You can whip me," and I kept saying, "I know I can." I was shouting up at that, and I was glad when that bell rung, because I could crawl back to that chair I was on, and I sit there, and boy, I was really trying to come up with a strategy now. Things were not going very well, I could tell. And as I'm sitting there strategizing and looking at the alcohol, I felt a tug on my arm. And I looked down there, and this time it's one of my daughters. And I looked at her, and I said, "What?" And she says, "Mama says to tell you that we're going to leave. We want you to come home with us. Just climb down and let's all go home. But she said to tell you we're leaving, but we want you to come along." And I looked down at her, and I said, "You tell your brothers and sisters and your mama just one more round." I said, "You got to watch." I said, "I got one more trick that I've never used before, but I want you guys to watch it." And so I went out there, and this time it was just merciful. I was just looking at alcohol's tennis shoes, and it was just beating the crap out of me. And I don't remember the moment that they left. I wasn't watching them, but they all left just like they said they had to, and they left. And I was just all bloodied up from that last round. So I climbed out of there, out of the arena, and I went and I started to do some healing. And so I said, okay, you gotta get it together here. So I went to Barnes and Nobles and I bought a self-help book, and I got some Nakai flute music and candles, and I said, okay, I'm going to eat different, and I started to get back in shape, and I was doing that pretty good, month or so. And then I got thinking about another trick. I said, you know something, I know one more thing I think I could do, go back there and whop this alcohol's ass. And I said, but maybe he ain't there. So I went back to the arena, and there that alcohol is standing, his arms in the corner around the ropes. Alcohol, I'm back. I knew you would be. I said, I'm coming in there, boy, I'm going to whoop your ass. You come on right up, he said. I know you can do it. And so I went back in there, and this time I wasn't even allowed in the ring. When I went looking, trying to climb up in the ropes, he just jumped down, put the boots to me, and I was right down right away. I couldn't believe it would happen that fast. It took a number of rounds before, but this time it happened right away. So I crawled out of there again. And I woke up the next morning, and I started thinking, I said, you know, you went to the wrong bookstore. You got to go to a different bookstore. So I went to a different bookstore, I got some more, and come back into the arena, and there he is. And this time he didn't even let me in the door. When I went to look, and he just dropped me right in my tracks right there and did it. And I had a moment of clarity. It was that moment I realized that the alcohol was lying. And that was on August 10th, 1978. And I left that arena, and I haven't gone back to that arena. I know it's there. I'm quite sure it's still there, but I walked out of that arena. And the only thing that I knew that I had left that I hadn't tried was come to you guys. I had heard about AA. My dad was in AA. We didn't like it that he was in AA. He was one of the first Native people in AA. He was 59 years sober when he made his journey. But he, at first they wouldn't let him into Rome because he's an Indian guy for a while. And then finally they changed the rules and let him in, but that's how it was very early in those days. So I knew some about AA. But I didn't want nobody to know I was going to go to AA. So I lived in Colorado Springs at the time, and there's a street there called Tejon Street. And the meeting was in the middle of that block on Tejon Street, up the second floor. And so I scoped it out in the afternoon to see where it was, and it was a place where they parked diagonally. And so I scoped that out, and I said, okay, I'll go there and see what this is all about. So a little bit before 8 o'clock, when the meeting started, I came there, and I turned the corner on Tejon Street, and there was one place to park right in front of that door. Everybody else seemed to be parking across the street. So as I drove by that slot, I said, I'm going to drive around the block one time. If that slot is there, then it's a sign I'm supposed to drive in and go in. So I come around the block. Sure enough, they're still parking over there. That one slot is there. I stopped my car, and I said to myself, to be sure, I'm going to go around the block just one more time. And I had a thing they call a res car. It's kind of an Indian joke, but just your res car always has duct tape, a binding wire, and so anyway, that's what I had. I had a res car. And so I drove around that block slow as that damn res car would go. I keep my foot on the brake, and drive around. Sure enough, I come around. That slot's still there. So I pulled in there, and I went up the steps, to where that meeting was, and I peeked in the door, and my first reaction, I don't know why it was, well, I know why it was, but my first reaction, I says, oh my God, is there only white people in here? And before I was going to go leave, because I didn't know how prejudiced I was at the time. I was raised on a reservation in Wisconsin, and we had a little bit of a history between us and the surrounding people there. And that meeting had a greeter. He's a great big bald-headed white guy. He's big, and he spotted me, and before I knew it, I had a cup of coffee in my hand, and it was like he had this sheep staff, and he swished me in, and I was sitting in the seat right in a meeting right with all the white people. And it happened so fast, and then I was too embarrassed to just get up and leave. So I sit there, and so I strategized. I said, I ain't going to tell them nothing. That's what I'm not going to do, say anything. So the meeting started, and they went around, and my name's so-and-so, I'm alcoholic, and went all the way around. He come to me, and I didn't say nothing. And so pretty soon, the guy next to me, he picked up on it, and they finished. And I don't remember a lot about that meeting. 3 things. I remember one thing was they were telling on themselves. They was revealing some weaknesses. Where I come from, you didn't do that shit. You didn't tell nobody about that kind of stuff, because you got to have your little mask on. And I thought, whoa, why are they doing that? And the other thing that really bothered me there was they were laughing. And there wasn't nothing funny, I didn't think. And they would talk, and they would laugh and clap and applaud. And I thought, God, this is just really a sick thing going on here. But the thing that I also noticed there that I couldn't understand, there was a feeling there. I didn't understand what the hell that thing was, but there was something there that I felt. And it made me want to come back the next day. And so I still didn't tell him nothing. But I came back and I sat there and I started to kind of listen. So as some time went on, I realized that they had a book there, and they talked about sponsorship, and they were talking about other things, and I realized that that I needed to have some help, and so I thought, okay, I'm gonna ask the sponsor. And what I was looking for was maybe somebody who was more, appeared to me like an elder. That's what I was looking for, because that's how I was raised on the res, elders important. So I watched for a while, and I seen this one guy. His name was Frank, and he was about 6'6" or 6'7", great big guy. He's an attorney. There's no doubt whether he was an alcoholic. That man was an alcoholic. There's no doubt about that. And he was in a lot of fights. His face scarred up. And I think he was hit with an ugly stick when he was a baby. He was just really an ugly person. So I asked him if he would be my sponsor. And he said, let's sit down and we'll talk. And he had this way of getting you angry, because he was just like scanning you. He'd like look you like in disgust, He'd like scan your body like that, and he was irritating me the way that he was interfacing. And he said, I've been in the program 15 years. He said, I watch you Indians. You come in here and you all sit in the back row. And you come just right after the meeting starts, and you leave really quick. And he said, y'all pass. My name's so-and-so, I pass. And he said, you guys are weird. He said, you don't get what's going on here. He said, none of you stick around here. And he said, I saw one of you guys stay one time 6 months. Just sit in the back row 6 months. He says, you're here every day, and then he disappeared. So he said, I don't know. He says, you guys don't make it. And he was talking to me like I felt putting me down or something. And I don't know if you've ever been a kid where your folks bought you a little bitty puppy, and you play with that puppy, and you try to get that puppy to growl. You know, you rub its face like that, and brush its, you know. That's what I felt he was doing with me. He was like, you guys don't make it. And I don't know, you don't understand. And that's how I felt, you know. And I remember I came to that point, I looked him right in the eye, just really strong like that. I didn't say it out loud because he was really big. But I thought to myself, you white son of a bitch, I'll show you I'm going to make it. That's what I'll do. And I didn't know till later on was, in his wisdom, he knew the only thing he had to work with was my anger. And if he could find that spot of that anger and keep me going and get me headed in the right direction, probably I stood a chance of doing it. So then he said, I'm going to tell you some things about sponsorship. He said, first of all, he said, I'm going to tell you some things I ain't. He said, I ain't your banker, so don't ask me for no money. I ain't your motel, so you're not going to be staying in my place. I ain't your taxi. You get to meetings, you got to go to meetings on your own, he said. And so he said, but there's one thing, he said, I just decided, he said, right now, he says, for the rest of your life, I just decided I'm going to be your friend. He said, I don't care whether you like me or not. He said, I just nothing to do with you. I just want you to know I decided to be your friend forever. And he said, the other thing I can help you with is, he said, I know something you don't know. And he said, what I know is how to stay sober. And he said, you little brown son of a bitch, you got no idea what I'm talking about. You don't know how to stay sober. You know, and he's just like, you know, just like rubbing my face like that. And then he grabbed this big book of AA, laid it on the table, and then he got 164 pages, and he held it in his hands like this. And he said, if you are willing to do exactly what's in this part of this book, 164 pages, he said, I'll guarantee you will never have to drink again. And he said it with such a spirit in his voice that I started inside to cry because I couldn't quit. It's like one of those moments. And I guess when you fully concede to your innermost self, your whole life is different. And so he had me look at the pages where the 12 proposals were. And he said, I was over at his house, and he was making me a peanut butter sandwich. We're having lunch. And he showed me the 12 proposals, and he says, I want you to ask yourself 2 questions for each one of these steps. One question was, read step 1, are you willing to go to any length to work this step? The second question was, you read step 1, you say, do you want to do it? He says, you don't have to do steps, stay sober. And he had a lot of opinions about AA. He said, half the people in AA don't work steps, and they don't drink, they stay sober. He said, then they borrow stories from the ones that work steps, and they pretend that they're working steps, and it ain't even their stories. It's just like a bar, they just borrowing the shit from somebody else. And so he said, you don't have to work steps. And I remember I was eating a sandwich as he's talking to me, and he said, AA, he says, it's like a banquet. He said, on one end there's a lobster and steak, so you can have that kind of sobriety. And then further down there's like meatloaf. Then further down he said there's like cheeseburgers. Further down, ham sandwiches. And then he said, way down at the bottom, he said, this is where the peanut butter sobriety is. And I'm eating his damn sandwich, and then he says, the problem with the peanut butter, he says, it sticks to the roof of your mouth. And you go, Then I don't know if you probably have had this experience where you go to a meeting and your sponsor's sitting on the other side of the table and somebody says something that he wants you to pay attention to. And they try to get your attention, and you know it. And so you just kind of do all the things to look, in a different way. And so I was in a meeting with him, and he's sitting over there. I could tell he was trying to get my attention. So finally, I get it over with. I just looked at him, and he went, he was just like rubbing my face, rubbing my face like this. So then he said, I'm gonna choose the meetings that you're to go to. And he had a schedule for the meetings in Denver. I had moved up there. And he circled a big book meeting, traditions meeting, a certain discussion meeting. There was one meeting where there were only old guys were there. Really old people. They were sober longer than Bill Wilson. They were just sober forever. And when you went there, they each had their chair. Like, one sat here, a newcomer, you didn't sit in that guy's chair. You sit in that chair, they said, go sit on that bench over there, that's Bill's chair. You go, whoa, excuse me. And so it was like one of those meetings, and the younger guys that went there, we used to make fun of these old guys because each one of them always said the same thing. They had no new knowledge to share. When you get up in the morning, throw your shoes under the bed, and we would like lip sync. Throw your shoes, you're looking at one another, because they said the same old thing. And thank God they did say some of those same old things. But I had to go to that meeting, and then one night I had my own choice I could go to. And he said, you go to these meetings, and you say your name's Don, you say you're alcoholic, and then he said, shut up. He said, you got nothing of any value that's going to help anybody. He said, there's no use you talking. And so AA is a small community, so once the word gets out, Big Frank's his sponsor, I can tell because he can't talk, and all that. So one night I went to this meeting at a place called Eagle Lodge. And I was doing good. I was reading the book and not talking and just saying that. And as we're sitting there, the meeting was getting going, this Indian girl walked in and sat right across the table from me. And she looked at me. I could tell the way her eyes were, that there's a possibility for coffee. And so I was strategizing in my head, and I said, I'm not going to have no coffee with her if I just say my name's Don, I'm alcoholic, I don't say nothing else. I got to say something else. So when it comes my time to talk, I'm quoting 449 and page 52, and boy, her smile got really big. She could tell I was a heavyweight in this recovery, And we did go have coffee. And I give her my phone number. And I was walking back to my little apartment that I had there. And I felt like John Travolta when I was walking out to I was like, I wanted to strut like that, just really. And as I approached the door and I unlocked it, the phone was ringing. And I said, That's her. She couldn't even wait till tomorrow. She's calling me right now. I knew it. And so I kind of prepared my little macho voice, you know. I pick up the phone. Hello. And guess who was on the other end? Frank, my sponsor. You know, the sponsors are like the internet. They're just everywhere. They know everything. What were you doing moving your lips? I heard you were talking. You know. So anyway, I got caught. But it wouldn't let me talk till after third step. And you know, I had tried to read that big book before, and I was told by you that there were instructions in there. And I paged through that looking for those instructions, and I could not find anything that even felt like instructions. In fact, it's the most boring book I ever read. It didn't hold my attention real easily. And what he helped me to do was to see the instructions. And then I was to go to the meeting. Whatever meeting I went to, I had to look at that meeting from the step that I was on. If I was working step 1, then that's whatever meeting I went to, that's where my ear was to listen to step 1. And so he had me read the first 43 pages for the first half of step 1. That was the instructions. And he said, if you are really alcoholic, you'll understand this, because it was written for you. And I started to read that, and it started to sink in what was going on, you know, with me. Then when they come to the second half of step 1, he showed me this instructions on page 52. There's a paragraph there, and it starts out, we were having trouble with personal relationships. So I had to flip that into a question. And I had to take a look at, am I having problems in personal relationships? And I had to take a look at enough of them until I could say, you know, something, you are having problems with relationships. So I started to look at how I was treating people, how I was behaving, getting even, silent treatment, you know, all those things. And I began to see for the first time what it meant. My life was unmanageable. So all 9 of those areas, I had to take a look at my emotional nature. When I was angry, what did I do when I was angry? And what did I do when I was in self-pity? And to go all the way down to all 9 of those areas. And so I did that. Then he taught me that the steps were all interconnected. That the work that you do in step 1, now you bring that work to step 2. And so what he showed me how to do was, say personal relationships, I was to take that area, and then I was to make this little mini vision, came to believe that a power greater than myself could, and I had to take a look at what would my life look like if God were running my relationships, to get an idea of that. And I had to do that in all 9 areas in step 2. Then what he told me was, step 2 then sets your intent for step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, he said this is connected to step 2. That's like turning on the flashlight in the darkness. And that's the beam that you follow through the work. And then he said you'll get a part of the vision when you take a look at your fear inventory and your sex inventory. That will be added to that vision from step 2 as you go through it. And so I did that. And so then I had some struggling with step 3 when I got there for what I thought my reasons were. I was raised on a reservation, and at that time there was just one church on our reservation. There was always some missionaries coming there. And so they would come in there and put their little sign up on the church, and then you always had like watermelon or clothes, you know, that your parents would drop you off there, and then of course you had to listen to the pitch first before you got the watermelon or the clothes, you know how that works. And then so then you go there for a while, and then they always had their little ceremonies, you know, like one of them, you know, they're going like this, and so all of us would have to learn to do go like this, when they prayed and stuff, and then pretty soon they'd run out of money, and they'd be gone. Then pretty soon the next church would come in, and then they'd explain to us, they'd say, boy, you're lucky because all of those ones that's going to hell. We are the ones that don't go to hell, we go to heaven. And you're going, man, I'm glad that these new ones are there. And then, of course, they say, no, you don't do this, you got to go like this, So they had a different little ceremony that they did. And then, to a little Indian kid, a nun is kind of scary. They had like habits. They call them habits. Now they don't dress like that. Now they're cool. And they carry rulers up their sleeves. And they patrol up and down the aisle. They never smile. And what they're trying to help you do is to find heaven. And so they'll say, okay, now if you do things what we tell you, you're not going to go to hell, you're going to go to heaven. But they'll say, you ever been burned with a cigarette? Yeah. Well, in hell, your whole body is going to be full of blisters from the top of your head to your feet. Now, you want to seek God? And you go, yes, ma'am, I want to seek God. Because a little kid, you get that picture. Not only that, in hell there ain't no water. Well, there ain't no water in hell. So you're going to be full of blisters and you're going to be thirsty. And do you want to seek God? And you go, you bet I do, sister. I sure do. See? And it was like this idea that you had the flames of hell licking your ass to find God. That's how it felt. And so then I come to you guys and you go very early in the program, by the way, you got to turn your left and you're well over the scare of God because you're kidding. You know. But whoever's wisdom it was to say, God, as you understand him, that was powerful. There was a freedom in that. And how I really ended up taking the third step is I couldn't get it because I didn't understand about this will. Where the hell is it? I know where my arm is and I know where my ear is, but where's the will? And then I sat in meetings and you guys confused me because you'd say, well, I turned my will over to God this morning. Then I took it back at noon and I turned it over and I took it back and I took it back and turned it over and I give it away and I loaned it and so I couldn't figure out how you were doing this. And it got me confused. And I think one of the speakers told that story about the frog. The frog in the pond. 4 frogs sitting on a log. One decided to jump in the water. And he didn't jump, he just decided. But then the story that I heard, the version I heard was, it said that when that frog decided, then God turned that frog to be orange. So you got 3 green frogs sitting on that log with 1 orange frog who made that decision to turn his will over to care of God. So he went on to say, he says, so what happens if you turn your life over to God on Wednesday and then Friday you get all pissed off? He said, you're just a pissed off orange frog. That's it. There's nothing to do with the decision you made. So then he went on to get some more examples, and he went on to say, then what happens if you get drunk 2 weeks later? He said, well, then you're a drunk orange frog. And somehow that clicked in what that decision was about. I didn't have to clean up my act. It wasn't about doing that. It wasn't like I failed if I got angry. It wasn't about that. It was about making this decision to get God involved in my life. And I remember I went over to Frank, and I was so excited that I caught on to what that was. And I went in and talked to him, and he's, well, I said, I'm ready to take the third step. I said, I want to become an orange frog, and I'm just ready to do it, so let's get it on. And he'd get that look on his face, and he'd say, You know, sometimes I just get really tired of this Indian shit that you're bringing around here. But if you want to become a frog, let's go ahead and we'll make you into a frog, you know. And so he took me through that part in the book line by line. And if there's a question, I had to answer the question. And I had to see, can I apply this to my experience? Was I the actor? And so I went through all of that, and boy, that was very, very helpful. And me and that old man, we got on our knees, held hands, and he read the prayer. Then I read that prayer, and that prayer was already written in the big book. And so when that was done, I said, well, what next? And he reached behind his chair and he pulled out a tablet, a ruler, and a pencil. And he said, next it says, at once we go on a writing inventory. And before I left there, I knew how to write a 5-column resentment inventory. I knew how to write a 4-column fear inventory. And I wrote an 11-column sex inventory. So where he says jealousy, each one I had to have a separate column so I could see the pattern. I separated them out. And then what God had me be instead, then that was added to the vision. So I went ahead and I did the inventory, and he was very specific about the dark crannies. I had to tell all. And I had some stuff that I would never tell nobody. So I wrote that stuff I wouldn't tell nobody in another little piece of paper. I didn't write it, include it in the first one. So this one Friday, I remember it was a Friday, I knew my inventory was done. I knew it was done. And then this feeling come in, you know, that one like my wrist and stomach, and I knew I was going to either fifth step or drink. It was right down to that. And so I called Frankie. They take him to the hospital. He couldn't do it. Called another guy. And so I fifth stepped with him. And when I was done, he says, is that it? And I said, that's it. I said, that wasn't so bad. So he said, I'm going to make another pot of coffee. So he put some more coffee on. As he's making his coffee, he said, I want to share with you about my first one. And he started telling me about some of the dark cranny stuff that was in his first fifth step. Man, this was one sick puppy. He had some bad shit in there that he said. And I remember, I said, you know, I do have a couple more pages. I just remember. I said, but in my mind, I said, I'm going to tell this guy what's written on here, but if he tells on me, I'll tell on him. I'll be sitting right in jail with him, you know. But I didn't know that he had the freedom. I wasn't free. I was doing that. So I started to read that part, and I had a hard time for it with some of it. And he just put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, just go ahead. He said, just read another line, read another line. And we went through it that way, and I finished it. Then he showed me the instructions in the book to go back home and to review, and I did that. He said, I'll sit by the phone if you catch something. He said, call me. I'll be right here. So I went home, and then he told me, he said, all the odd steps, they have a set of promises. And he said, in this fifth step, there's a set of promises, but you got to do all this stuff first. But he said, the way the promises are in the big book is, he said, they're conditional. The promises ain't free. You got to meet a condition, then you get the cookie. Withholding nothing, you get the promises. You withhold something, no cookie. You got to tell it all. And so I went and I looked at that very carefully, and I saw I told everything that I knew about. I knew it was good. And so he said, then you read the promises sentence at a time, and you claim it. I can look the world in the eye. I can be at peaceful peace and ease. And I remember there was things like, was a prison for my sexual abuse. that I went through. It was just a nightmare. All those years that happened from when I was 10. And I remember it came up and I wasn't paralyzed by it no more. I went, whoa, look at this. There's something's going on here. And so I went through and I claimed those promises. So I went through and I was shown where in my inventory, the way it was laid out, is I had the character defects for steps 6 and 7. And so I did those. And then there was information on there for my amends. And I went ahead and I did my amends. How am I on time, by the way? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? So anyway, I went through and I made my amends. And my character defects, I struggle with those. Because it seemed like every time I tried to get rid of one, it got worse. So I knew I was doing something wrong. So I tried something else and I tried to do it and it would get worse. Until I heard a story in the program. And this guy was talking about step 6 and 7. And he says, supposing that you're going to bake a cake, you turn the oven on 350 or whatever, you put the flour and sugar and everything to make the cake, smooth it out, put it in the pan. Then you got to open up the oven door and you got to put that cake in there, and then you close the door, and then the oven will bake the cake. And he said, what you're doing in step 6 and 7 is, he said, you're putting yourself in the oven and you open up the door. You done yet, God? No, not yet. How's it going now? Have you? And he said, you got to quit peeking. You got to put yourself in the oven, just let God bake you. Just leave it. Once you do it, just leave it be and He'll bake you. And somehow I found that out. That was true. That I could put my defects in there, close the oven door, and I was to go on to the next step, step 8 and 9. And so I went ahead and I did that. And the way I was taught was to go through the steps every year. Not everybody does, but that's the way I was taught, to go through them every year. So I did. And when I got to my third time I went through the work, it was, I went through a period right after that I went crazy. And I don't know what was going on, but meetings got really stupid. I judge meetings. And like some guys, they tell the same old story every time. I could tell the story with them. And it was irritating me. And I called my sponsor, and he was stupid. He was just like, whatever. And I was trying to do my 11th step in the morning at night, and I felt I was doing like a rosary, Consider your plans with the ask God for help, with your now you're in a different plane, and if you got a decision, you do this, and then you come to rely on it. And finally I said, I'm tired of starting I just want to be normal. I don't have to do this shit every day like this, I just need a break. And then my big book, it was so underlined and so full and falling apart. Now mine was rubber banding and coffee spilled on it, and I couldn't write no more definition of words and stuff. And how can you go into a book like that and learn anything? And so the book was stupid too. And so I was just irritated at everything. If it moved, I become irritated. Even my kids were saying, "Dad, you got to go to a meeting." How they do that. So anyway, I went to see. By then I started working with an elder named Johnny Looking Cloud. He was sober a long time. He was a Lakota man. And so I went to see him, and he lived in Estes Park, outside a little town outside Denver. And he would, whenever I go there, I'd be like, my mouth would be talking, and he just whittled on a piece of wood, and he just let me talk till I was done. And so when I got done, he said, "How long are you sober?" Exactly. And I told him, he said, 3.5 months. He said, you're right where you're supposed to be. And you know, when you're in a bag of crap, that's the last thing you want to hear somebody tell you. You're right where you're supposed to be. You know, or they say, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. To hell he don't. I mean, that's why you're such a panic, you know. And so now he said, it's time you go on to the next step. So he just took a stick and he drew this circle in the ground in his backyard. And he said, you got to add a culture to this AA work that you're doing. And he said, the Creator, when the Creator made the earth, he made it run according to a set of principles, laws, and values. The salmon has theirs, the moose has theirs, and he made a set for you. The only difference between you and the salmon and the moose is, he said, he gave you something called a free will. You don't have to do nothing except die. Other than that, everything's a matter of choice. And he said, everything on the earth that the Creator made, it has a cycle. It has a season. It all travels in a circle and a cycle. And he said, same with your sobriety. And he said, when you first come into the program, he said, just like an oak tree, the sap starts to flow in an oak tree. It don't look like nothing's going on, but that life force is starting to spread itself through the tree. Then he said, when you come in the program, he said, that's what happens. The Spirit comes inside of you, and you start to change. And he said, other people will notice something's going on with you. You don't see it. Just like the oak tree doesn't know that's going on. And he said, but the friends will see it, and they'll smile until you keep coming back. Or sometimes they'll say, you got a different hairdo or something? No, same old hairdo I had since the 60s. Just leave me alone. Excuse me. But they were noticing the change. Then one day you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you notice it. You say, I don't know what it is, but there's something's going on. So he said then, when you come in the program, your first year, just like you have 4 seasons. First year's like a spring, and then you just bud. You just got your little branches, and you got your little job, and you start paying bills, and you start being responsible, and whatever. Then he said the second year, if you continue in the program, those buds unfold. The leaves, they turn into leaves, and pretty soon you got a shape. You go, whoa. And then you hear people talk. You'll say, I know who I am. I'm in sobriety. I'm 2 years. I'm here. I'm in this step. You locate. You know where you're at. And it's not that you don't have problems. You just handle them a little different. So then by the 3rd year, you come into the fall season, like an oak tree. The oak tree is standing out there, yellow leaves, fruits, harvest, nuts. People taking this picture, and that tree is so beautiful. People can't wait. And that tree is going, whoa, check me out. I want to stay like this forever. I have arrived. I got the program. I know how it works. So then one day, the temperature changes a little bit. Gust of wind comes along. Some of the leaves go away. And the oak tree says, that's no big deal. I got lots of leaves. I'll just maybe increase my meetings, and I'll call my sponsor more often, and they'll grow back. Then a couple of weeks go by, temperature changes a little bit, gust of wind comes along, about 1/4 of the leaves go away. And now that oak tree is getting really spiritual. It just sees this stuff is going on. But the only spiritual thing the oak tree can think now, because it sees the leaves going away, and it knows the rest of them are too, it just says, oh, shit. And pretty soon all the leaves go away. And the oak tree is standing there. Now in that winter season, there's 3 questions that cannot be answered. One is, why am I? And you'll hear people in program, I don't even know who I am no more. And then you don't know who you are, you lose your identity. And then you don't know where you're going, you lose direction. So you feel lost. See, the oak tree, it can't figure it out. It had 3 seasons of some cool stuff going on. Now the birds don't even land on it. Nobody wants nothing to do with it. And so what he said was, the reason that you are crazy is, he says, you went through 1 year of spring, 1 year of summer, 1 year of fall, now you're right in the middle of winter. He said, that's the way it is. The Creator, all those things you learn as the leaves. So he takes that away because the tree has to go on and grow the next season to be shaped differently, believe differently, see differently, act differently. Because you can very well go through 4 years of sobriety and still think you're ugly. And you go through the work and all of a sudden you say, wait a minute, I'm not ugly. I'm kind of cold. And you start to talk to yourself, you see a little bit different. And I remember I was driving back to Colorado Springs, and I went on a back road, and I started to cry from what he told me. I didn't know I was in winter. I thought God was mad. I thought I said shit and God in the same sentence. God said, that's enough. I'm going to just punish you. But it wasn't like that at all. Or I thought I had done something wrong. I had done absolutely nothing wrong. I was just in the winter. It's a part of the cycle system. Just like a tree has to lose its leaves, I have to go through that season, then I'll bud again. The sap will start to flow, and away I go again. Then he went on to say, he says, by the way, he said, it'll happen again, 7 to 8. Then it'll happen again, 11 to 12. Then it'll happen again, 15 to 16. It will happen like that. Then he went on to say, there's seasons of recovery. 4, 4, 4, 4. It's for 16. So what happens when you go 15 to 16? You actually leave that set and you go down south to another set of 16. He said you shift. It's different. The shift is different. And he said that if you don't know about it, he says you can do dumb things. You can have depression set in. You can feel really lost. A lot of changes. Marriages will break up. Now, it's not just that. Is your relationships will go in a 4-year cycle. Every 4 years, if you ever notice, there's just this irritable time in a relationship. And it'll happen again 7 to 8, 11 to 12, 15, 16. Now, the thing to be aware of is your partner could be going through spring, summer, fall, winter. You could be going through spring, summer, fall, winter. And your relationship is in a different cycle. So you could be in spring, personally. Your mate could be in winter of the 4th year of your marriage or relationships. So what do you suggest? I would suggest come to Sedona for a year and... No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. But to know that there's a time of struggle. And there doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. Relationships have to grow. People have to grow. And so I learned about the seasons. And so even knowing about them is that way. And so I'm going to close with this. It is amazing what the Creator allows a person in recovery to do. I started running a foundation called White Bison, and I took AA's 12 steps and I put them in a circle. 3 steps in the east, 3 in the south, 3 in the west, 3 in the north. And when I took the 12 steps in a circle to the native communities, they started working steps. Just like how Johnny Cloud showed me, it's in a circle. Because our blueprint inside, that's how it thinks. Frank was wrong, we're not all screwed up. Like he said. But the book says, that it doesn't say it knows everything. It says we know little. There's more that you can discover in doing that. And you can write your own 3rd step prayer. So today, When I do the steps, I take the third step with a chupa, with a pipe. That's the way we used to pray. And I write my own prayer to it. And I take my fifth step. After that, go in the sweat lodge to do that. And I shared some about the character defects, the tobacco ties, to do that. And so it is very comfortable to put the ceremony along with the work that we do. It's not a white man's program, like how I originally thought. Not at all. You guys weren't interested in culture. You were interested in helping me recover from a fatal disease. And it was you that was right. I was the one that was wrong. I had to change my thinking. So if I had to pick the worst thing, if I made a list of all the things that was worse than my alcoholism, I would say the top of the list would be loneliness. That hole, that emptiness that I felt, and did a lot of stupid things just to fill that hole of loneliness. If I were to pick the best thing that has gone on in this program, is if you were able to see the relationship I have with the Creator, it's just really freaking cool. It's just really, really cool. I like how you say it about the love. I don't have a judgmental Creator. For a number of years in the program, I made God a superhuman, and I found out he's got different rules. He loves different, and he didn't pay back and judge and all that stuff like I was taught in the religious schools and things like that. I recognized what that feeling was in that first meeting I went to, and it's a feeling of belonging. It's a feeling you get when you come home. I remember one time I was at home in the nearest airport to the reservations, Green Bay, Wisconsin. My dad was taking me back after I was home for 3-4 days, and he said, I don't want you to come back here no more. He said, you're embarrassing the family, you're drinking, you're just a troublemaker. He said, I would appreciate if you just won't come here no more. And I understood what he was saying, because I was just so, all that stuff was going on when I was drinking. And what I do is I end up coming to you guys. And what do you fools say? Keep coming back. Oh, I can't believe you would say, keep coming back. But that's what you did, and you meant it. And so this would never happen, but if there was a choice I had to make between my own tribe and you guys, if I had to do one or the other, I'd come to you guys. Because you say, keep coming back. Mine will kick me out if I did it again, and that's how that works, So you are my tribe. Wherever I go, I always feel like that. I feel welcome. I was attending FOTS very early when they first started in Denver, outside of Denver, and there's quite a few of these around now: Louisiana, Maine, and California, and Seattle, and I was telling some friends here, I said, this FOTS here, it feels to me like the old one. It was just a lot of love here. You can feel it. It's just, and I watched and I listened to some of the new people here. You guys are having a spiritual experience, and you didn't have to open your mouth or nothing. Just sit in the energy, sit in the love, and it changes you. I used to I just couldn't wait till the next FOTS meeting because I always come out of there differently. And so I'm just really, honored to be here. Jean and I, my wife, we've had a real good time. We want to thank the committee. It's very well organized as far as I'm concerned. I suppose behind the scenes there's a glitch here or there, but I didn't notice that we were treated like royalty from the time that we were asked, and the airplane tickets and everything just just flowed. So I really thank you for the hospitality and for treating us. So I'll close with this prayer. I got this prayer here, like everything else. And that prayer goes on to say, God, thank you for what you've given me. God, thank you for what you've taken from me. And God, thank you for what you've left me. And I got a tribe that cares about my sobriety and fellowshipping and sharing. So thank you very much.